Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. I want to start this shir on Pesach with a story that happened to me this Shabbat. So, you may or may not know that I am a member of Edgware Adas Shul. I'm also a member of Kehilat Netzach Yisrael, so I've got dual membership. Now, dual membership of two different shuls has its advantages. Of course, it means you get to go to be part of two wonderful kehilas, but one of the other advantages is that you do two sets of security duty for each shul. So I find myself constantly hopping between one shul and another. So it came to my turn for security, and it happened to be on the second day of Pesach. I was due to go to Netzach Yisrael shul and stand outside and make sure everything's okay. So it happens to be about 10-15 minutes away from my home. So my slot was 12:15 in the afternoon. So I davened somewhere else and I came walking to shul. And as I'm walking to shul, I'm on time, no problem. I see people walking past me, like shul's finished. All the people from Netzach, all walking past me. I'm saying, good Yom Tov, good Yom Tov, Yom Tov. I'm thinking, what is it? People leaving early or what? So I got there. As I got to the shul and stood outside the shul to do my security duty, I look inside. There's not a soul there. So what do? I say to myself, well, there's two things I can do. I could just say, you know what? What's the point? I come all this way. There's nobody here. Go back home. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've come all the way here. I should stay here. I know it sounds pointless, but you're supposed to do a job. Do the job. So the job is pointless. So Avraham Avinu was told to count the stars, but the stars are infinite, but he counted 1, 2, 3, 4, even though it was pointless. Why? Because Hashem told him, count the stars. He counted the stars. So I thought, you know what? I've been told to do security. There's nobody here. I'm going to do it anyway. So I'm standing there looking like a bit of a berk because I'm standing in front of an empty courtyard, empty shul. After a minute, I hear somebody running out the shul. It's one of the stragglers right at the end. He'd come out. There's two shuls in the same complex. One is Netzach Yisrael, it's an Ashkenazi kehillah, and one is the Adani shul. Adanim are the Jews from Aden. They're like, I don't know if you can call them Sephardim, but they have different. They're Adani. They're from Aden. So they have their own minions. So I see one of the guys coming out, straggler, last of the last, coming out of the Adani minion. I said, oh, Baruch Hashem, at least I know I did something, I've done something positive. I opened the gate for him and he came out and that was it. Fine. I was all ready to go home when, the fellow was walking away from me, the Adani was walking away from me. All of a sudden, a woman comes running up. And she's in a panic. Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Don't close the gate. I said, what's the matter? Calm down. She goes, I left my bag in the shul. I said, but the shul's all locked up. This fellow came out. He just walked out. And when the inside gates close, they close. So me and this other Adani fellow, when we're looking at this woman, she's oh no, I can't. It's my bag in there. And of course, the Adani minion only has a minion only on Shabbat or Yom Tov. They don't have minion during the week. So now that her bag is locked in the shul, she won't get it next week. She doesn't even live in Edgware. She lives in Stamford Hill, which is miles away. So she needs this bag. I don't know. I didn't want to ask her what was in the bag, but it must have been pretty important because she was really panicking. So what happened? This Adani fellow, luckily he hadn't gone too far because he was still there next to me. So he said, okay, don't worry. We tried going in again. I opened the gate. And in the end, he went to a neighbor. He managed to get the key. I don't know how on earth he knew where the key was. He went to some neighbor. He found a spare key and he went and opened the door. And everyone had left. Everyone was long gone by this point. He went, he got a key and she got a bag and it was a happy ending. So what do we get from this story? Well, one thing that Rav Fishel Schachter always says is a person is where he's supposed to be. There's no such thing as you're in some random place, you're stuck in a traffic jam, you know, what's the point of me being here? I'm just wasting time. No. A person is where he's supposed to be. Everything has hashgacha. If you remember, when I gave my shiurim in America, I misjudged my where, you know, the hotel that I booked when I was in England. Before I went out, I booked a hotel in a place in New York. I thought it was near the shul I was speaking for. It turns out it wasn't so near, and it was in a very, very bad neighborhood. When Rav Avram Nisanyan heard where I was, he said, there must be a reason. You had to be where you had to be. Maybe they need some kedusha in that area where there's probably no Jew for miles. He says you had to be where you had to be. The same thing. But also, it occurred to me that there's no such thing as random. A person has to be where he has to be, of course, but a person has to do what he has to do. If a person has a job to do, just like Avraham Avinu was told, count the stars, like we said, he could have just said, what's the point? Why am I doing something that's fruitless? You might as well tell me count the grains of sand on the seashore. Because you know, I was actually informed about this following fact at my first Seder night. One of our guests told us that there was a professor, Dr. Carl Sagan. I'm not sure if he's Jewish or not, because Sagan could be Sagan, like Sagan HaKohanim. So Professor, whatever his name is, Carl Sagan, said that there are more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand in the world. An amazing fact. So can you imagine if you were Abraham and you were told, count the stars, you would not have been excused for thinking Avram would have said, hey, Ribbon Shalom, please give me a break. I'm going to be here till 120 and a bit longer. I'm still going to be counting. I wouldn't even scratch the surface. No. He had to do what he had to do. You had to do what he had to do. You have to do security. You have to do security. There's no such thing as pointless. And the Jews, when they left Egypt, they had to do what they had to do. The Jews, when they had to cross the Red Sea, and there was somebody called Nachshon ben Aminadav, he had to cross the Red Sea. He went in and he did what he had to do. The water went up to his nostrils. He could have died. No, I've been given instruction. I do what I'm told. A Jew does as he's told. There's no two ways about it. Now, Mitzrayim, where we were in prison for 210 years, was not, put it this way, the most friendliest of places. Wasn't the most Semitic of atmospheres. Because we all know what happened. I don't have to go into the whole story. But it wasn't always like that. Because when we went into Mitzrayim, things were all rosy. Because we were given a royal invitation. Yosef called his brothers and his father, and Pharaoh gave him a royal invitation, and he rolled out the red carpet. Come, you can go and have Goshen, no problem. By the time he got out, 210 years later, oy vey, was it a different story? The Ben Ish Chai has a remez, he has a hint to this, because from the very word Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim starts with a mem and ends with a mem. But the thing is, the mem at the beginning is not the same mem at the end, because the mem at the beginning is a regular mem. The mem at the end is called a final mem, and they look different. A regular mem, which is at the beginning, has a little opening in there. If you can see what I'm tracing, it goes round like that, has a little way in. So Mitzrayim was a closed atmosphere, but there was a way in. The Jews went in and they were given some sort of welcome. By the time they were coming out, by the time Pharaoh showed his true colors, they got to the end, the mem was closed. The mem sofit is a closed circle, there's no way out. They literally trapped us. There was absolutely no way of leaving Mitzrayim unless you left in a box, unless you were left in a body bag. There were various methods that the Egyptians used that they employed to keep the Jews there. there was black magic. They had these animals, these golden dogs and golden animals that used to bark when anyone would go, like an alarm system. It was crazy what they did. And also Mitzrayim, another hint, Mitzrayim comes from the word Meitzar. Meitzar means constricted. They constricted us, they pushed us in, they hemmed us in. So with all this, ultimately after the 10 plagues and all the whole thing, so Hashem said, right, we're leaving. Without a moment's notice, the Jews went. And there's this whole thing we're taught when we're in junior school and when we're in Cheder, that the Jews went out with the dough on their backs, and when they went out, it was still hadn't risen yet, and that's why we eat matzahs. It's not exactly 100% the case, but at the end of the day, they didn't leave with lafas and ashtanur bread, Iraqi pitas, and if you're Indian, they didn't leave with chapatis. They didn't leave with any of that. No, they had unleavened bread. We know this. That's why we have the crackers. If you're Ashkenazi, if you're Sephardi and you have the Masorah, have the tradition, we have Sephardi matzah, which is bendy. By the way, if you look on TorahAnytime.com, there is a small film I made. It's maybe 8-10 minutes long, all about how Sephardi matzahs are made. Have a look under my page on TorahAnytime.com. Search for Sephardi matzah. It's very, very short, but it's very incisive, and you'll see exactly how Sephardi matzahs are made. It's fascinating. So anyway, so what's all this business about leaving with dough? And they knew they were going to leave. They were waiting. In fact, the Egyptians were pounding on their doors, telling them, "No, go already." And the Jews said, "No, sorry. God never told us to go yet. We're waiting for the command of God, and then we'll go. Go now, please go now." They were screaming at them. "Sorry, we're here. Take a chill pill. We'll go when we're ready. We're not thieves that we're leaving in the night." So what is all this? Why they left with matzah that was unleavened? So I read something very simple, but it's very, very meaningful. I read it in there's a publication that comes out from Mark Curtis. He brings out this Dvar Torah sheet every week. It's fantastic. They brought out a Pesach special as well, packed with Divrei Torah, halachot, stories, everything. So the following idea was in there. Can you imagine if the Jews were, let's say, for want of a better word, they left when they were ready? So what would they have done? Of course, anybody who goes on a journey, any Jew who goes on a Chol HaMoed trip, any Jew who goes on any type of holiday or vacation where there's no kosher food, what do the Jewish mothers do? They pack a massive suitcase. They got in there everything. Anyone who goes on a Chol HaMoed tiyul will know this. There's matzah brai, there's chrem, there's all sorts of fruits and vegetables and the whole ganze sprach, way, way more than anybody can eat. So the Jews, what would they have done? They would have made a whole massive feast and everything, and they wouldn't have made matzah in a hurry. They would have made proper bread. Would have had proper full-on provisions. Would have been eating like kings in the desert. And what would the Jews have then said? They would have said, "We came out of Egypt by ourselves. We went when we were ready." So there would have been a little bit of a feeling that we redeemed ourselves. God did all the groundwork. He did the 10 plagues and everything, and he made a laughing stock of Pharaoh. But at the end of the day, we set a date, we made everything ready, and we left when we were ready. Said God, you leave when I tell you to leave. The parable that came to my mind was, imagine if you have a running race, 100 meters in the Olympics, and you have all these people in this strange contorted position. They've got these funny leg things, they've got the hands on the ground, their legs are up, and they're waiting. They've got the guy with the gun, and suddenly the gun goes and boom, they're off. That's what it was like in Egypt. They were waiting. They were like those runners in a starting line, waiting to go out. No, we're not ready yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. Ready, go! And they went out. They had no time to bake anything. They were on spilkers. They were waiting with a staff in their hand, with a dress like they were going to go out. They had the gartel, the belt rather, and everything. They're all ready to go out. But they were under starters' orders. Why? Because we were never meant to come under any misconception. It was not us who released ourselves. It was God who released us. God told us when to come out, and God was the one who was behind everything. And that's the theme of Pesach, that whatever we went through, whatever stage we were at in the redemption, it was only by virtue of Hashem. We know this because we say, Dayenu. Hashem, if you would let us go, just walk out the doors of Egypt, that would have been enough. Oh, you took us to Har Sinai? That was even better. And each of the 15 stages, you say, thank you, Hashem. You didn't have to do that, but you did. We're very grateful. Another thing that I heard, I'm not sure if I mentioned this last week, I'm going to mention it now anyway, that there's a song that we sing called Chad Gadya at the end of the Seder. Sounds a bit like a nursery rhyme. It could not be further from the truth. It is one of the holiest, deepest, most Kabbalistic piyutim that you could ever imagine. There are concepts in there that are way beyond what the ordinary person can understand. Very, very deep piyut. And it says there all about the father, he bought the goat for 2 zuz, and then there's all stuff about there was a dog that ate the cat, and then the stick, and then the shochet, and I haven't got the Haggadah in front of me, I don't know the whole sequence by heart, but it ends up with Hashem killing the angel of death. Now, that's all very nice, but there's one section in that sequence which doesn't make any sense. And I never got it, but I mentioned this at my Seder table, and everyone I mentioned it to got it at the end. Right? So I felt like a bit of a fool because I didn't get it at all. But anyway, Baruch Hashem, I've got clever people that I'm talking to. So one of the things that doesn't make sense, there was a stick that was used to hit the dog, right? A stick was hit. So a dog can eat a cat. A shochet, a ritual slaughterer, can slaughter a cow. The angel of death can kill the shochet, right? There's independence there. You can see the how this thing flows. But who's wielding the stick? The stick can't hit the dog by itself. So I asked the question, who's using the stick? And I was told unanimously, it's God using the stick. So I asked the question, why? Right, you're telling me about the stick and you're leaving it to my imagination that God is wielding the stick? You know why? I heard this from Rabbi Wallerstein. He said, this little tidbit of information about the stick hitting the dog is inserted right in the middle of Chad Gadya to show us that, hey, all this whole long thing, this whole sequence from goat to God, it's all Hashem. Don't think the dog ate the cat. Don't think there was any independence there. No, the stick demonstrates that. Whereas the stick, you can see it's obvious the stick was wielded by Hashem, but it also follows with all the other things. Everything in this world happens because Hashem wills it to happen. There's nothing independent of Hashem and Hashem's hashgacha. Because we often think that. We often think, well, why did this happen? Why would God let this happen? But we have to realize that God is behind it. And very often we have no clue what Hashem is doing. Really, we have no clue any time why God does what he does. But we just need to know if God's doing it, God must know what he's doing. Because God can create the world, which he did. God creates stars and universes, and we can't create diddly squat. That's what we have to realize. Yeah? We can't create an ant. God creates billions of ants. Okay? So that puts us on our level and shows us a little glimpse of what God can do. Okay. So let me give you a little insight, one insight about Manishtana. Because Manishtana, classically, we always talk about it's the children who sing it, and it's always a very positive lesson that we learn from it. Why is this night different from all other nights? We have all lovely, different, wonderful explanations. But I saw this year in the Torah Tavlin Haggadah, which a lot of what I'm going to say now is from the Torah Tavlin Haggadah, which I highly recommend. It's a fantastic, fantastic Haggadah, full of wonderful insights and stories and Haggadah and everything. So it says in the Manishtana something very, very different from how we would have learned it when we were young. So he says, the Manishtana is really a Musar. It's meant to teach us something, but in a negative way, it's teaching us how to be positive. Let me explain, indulge me to explain. So, what's the first verse in Manishtana? Matzah. All year round we have bread and matzah. On Pesach we only eat matzah. Yeah, matzah, we say, well, because matzah, because we had matzah when we left Egypt, etc., blah, blah, blah. Matzah has a different meaning. There's a pasuk in the Torah that says, Shnei anashim ivrim nitzim. What does this pasuk refer to? There were two bad eggs, two very badly behaved Jews, called Datan and Aviram. They were the worst troublemakers you could ever imagine. If there was trouble, they were there. They were ready to take on anybody. What happened? They were arguing. Moshe Rabbeinu, in our first vision of Moses, in the beginning we see he's trying to break up a fight. Who are these two Jews who are fighting and arguing? Datan and Aviram. They happen to be brothers, by the way. So what's this? So the Torah says there were two Jewish men who were arguing. What is the word the Torah uses for arguing? It doesn't say merivah, which means an argument. It says the word nitzim. Nitzim means strife or argument. It's a strange word, no? But nitzim is related to the word matzah. So nitzim, matzah can mean argument. So what does this explanation tell us? It tells us that matzah comes to demonstrate arguments, strife. Manishtana is telling us on this night we have to eliminate disunity. We have to eliminate arguments. We have to work on ourselves to make peace with our fellow Jews. All year round we're arguing. Arguments, we should never have arguments. But on this night we're showing everybody with total certainty that we have to be in unity. Forget the arguments. Now moving on, maror. What is maror? Of course maror is bitterness. How do we get to the stage when a person becomes bitter? You know how a person becomes bitter? A person can be greedy. If a person looks with an eye of avarice, he's just jealous. I want what he has. He's got a nice car. I work very hard. Why don't I have a nice car? He's got a nice wife. I don't have a wife. I don't have a wife at all. Why don't I have a nice wife? Why don't I have a nice house? Why haven't I got a nice job? Why can't I have what he has? I deserve what he has. I'm no worse than he is. I'm way better than he is. And then you look at life with this jaundiced eye and know that only leads to one thing. That type of myopic vision only leads to bitterness. A person leads a life, his life is nothing. His life is bitter and it's miserable. A person has to appreciate what he has. I heard a beautiful, beautiful phrase from Rav Palm. It was actually quoted, I heard this originally from Rav Krohn. He quoted Rav Palm. He said, it's such a beautiful thing from Rav Palm. Rav Palm says, everybody is looking for the city of happiness. But the city of happiness is in the state of mind. Isn't that incredible? You want to be happy? Happiness is not made by external things. Cars don't make you happy. Houses don't make you happy. Exam results don't make you happy. And yes, even soft matzah doesn't make you happy. You know what makes you happy? You make you happy. You want to be besimcha? It's up to you. It's all under your control. It's in your state of mind. Such a beautiful thought that Rav Palm, alav shalom, zecher tzedek livracha, gives us. Something we should all bear in mind. So, maror means jealousy. We've got to work on ourselves. Don't get to the point where we govern and we're so bitter and jaundiced. Now, what about the next one? Dipping. Tonight we dip twice. What does dipping show? We dip once, we dip twice. It shows that we're indulging. And maybe we're overindulging. What happens if a person overindulges? Again, that also leads to misery, because yesh mana rotzeh matayim. Somebody has 100, he wants 200. He wants to indulge in this pleasure. It doesn't end there. Nothing ends there. You want to have something nice to eat and it's sweet, then that will give you something inside you want to have more and more and more. The Gemara even says this. A person can eat and he can be saveya, can be full up, and yet when he's served dessert, he'll miraculously find his appetite again. So the Gemara even brings this, and we know this for a fact. If you've had a nice meal and somebody brings out a nice tiramisu, or a nice strawberry sorbet, or a nice, what do they call it in America, strawberry shortcake. Yeah, for some reason there'll always be that little pocket of room inside your stomach, and we'll be able to polish it off. So it's the same thing. If we overindulge, it's another thing we have to work on. And lastly, on all nights, we can lean or we can sit straight, but on this night we only lean. Heseba. What does leaning mean? Of course, classically, we always taught leaning means it's a sign of being rich. On this night, we're kings, we're all kings. Yes, that's one meaning, but there's another meaning to leaning, and this meaning you will not have heard before. When a person leans, I'll tell you, it just occurred to me, I remembered something that my Rosh Kollel, Rav Yehuda Baruch Lieberman, told me. He said, when a person comes to Kollel and he wants to learn, he sits down, he steigs, and his back is leaning over the Gemara, and he's learning and he's steiging. And then, as time goes on, he could find that he leans back a little in his chair. And he takes it a bit easy, and maybe his feet go up. He said, that's the first sign of decay. A person leans back in his chair, and he takes it easy a bit. That's a warning sign. It's a bad thing. You're not crouching over your Gemara, you're leaning back. It's a sign of laziness. It's the same thing here. Heseba, to lean is a sign of laziness. Now, to me, in my humble opinion, this is the worst machala, the worst disease that has been inflicted on the Jewish people in our generation. It's a generation of laziness. We cannot be bothered to do mitzvot. We'd rather be sitting in front of the internet, or sitting in front of our phones, or sitting doing nothing, or watching YouTube for 7 hours. It's much easier to do that. Correct? You're right, it's easier. But life is not about doing things in an easy way. For me, it's a lifelong fear. I'm not scared of many things. Hashem notwithstanding, of course. I'm not scared of many things. I'm not scared of the dark. I'm not scared of a lot of it. But there's one thing that absolutely terrifies me. And it grips me every day in fear. You know what my fear is? My fear is not utilizing my potential. My fear is being lazy. It haunts me. Today, the shir was moved to somebody else's house, and unfortunately they couldn't make it. And something happened, and we couldn't have it in that other person's house, so we had to have it here, even though that it wasn't necessarily suitable to have it here, but we had to have it here. But the thought went through my mind, albeit very briefly, you know what? So we'll have the share somewhere else. We'll cancel the share, or we'll have it another time. And I thought to myself, what are you thinking of? How can you do that? How can you not have a share? How can you not have Torah in the world? You can't do that. Then you come after 120 years and Hashem will tell you, what happened to that share? Where did it go? Because you were lazy, you couldn't be bothered. You listen to your Yetzer Hara and say, nah, never mind. Let's not do it. It terrifies me. Wasting potential, wasting time terrifies me. And you know what? It should terrify you as well. It should be at the forefront of your mind. You should feel like there's a hand on your back, ready to tap you, saying, hey, what are you doing now? You serving Hashem? Are you busy with Avodat Hashem? Are you doing the right thing? And what will your answer be? No, I'm on my phone. And I'm looking at text messages that have absolutely no meaning and they will not get me Olam Haba. I'm glancing at a website that will not advance my cause in this world whatsoever. I'm not talking about unsuitable. Of course, unsuitable stuff on the internet, everybody knows about that. You don't need me to tell you that. But I'm talking about the sheer time wasting. The sheer time wasting, it's criminal. Heseba, that's what it's teaching us. Don't lean back in your chair. Not when you're learning Torah, not when you're looking in the internet, not when you're mucking around with your phone or doing nothing. Never lean. Use yourself, be proactive. 4 beautiful lessons that we have from the Manishtana that you would not have learned at Sunday school. Now, what does a Jew do when he feels that he's not performing, that he's not utilizing his potential, that he could be in a better place, he could be in a better level? Let me tell you a beautiful story from, okay, I'm not going to tell you who it is. There was a young boy, his name was Shlomo Zalman, very famous name. Shlomo Zalman was walking with his father. He must have been 7 or 8 years old, walking back from the Kotel. And he sees the Gadol Hador. The Gadol Hador at that time in Yerushalayim was a very holy and saintly man whose name was Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. So this Shlomo Zalman's father knew Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, and the two of them engaged in conversation. And the little Shlomo Zalman was holding his father's hand, was listening to the two rabbis talking. And then Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld turned to little Shlomo Zalman and he said to him, "No, did you say the Manishtana at the Seder night?" "Yes," said Shlomo Zalman. "And no, did you get your answer at the end?" "Yes, I got my answer." "What was the answer?" "The answer was, Avadim Hayinu, we were slaves." "Very nice," said the rabbi. "Did you read the Manishtana last year as well?" "Yes, I did." And then Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld asked a killer question. He looked at the little boy and he said to him, "If you had the answer last year, why did you still have the same questions this year? You already knew the answers. Why did you bother saying the questions if you already had the answer?" So little Shlomo Zalman looked up at the rabbi and he was speechless. And you know what he did? The little 7, 8-year-old boy, little Shlomo Zalman, looked up at the rabbi and he burst out crying because he did not have the answer. Now, the story goes that many years later, little Shlomo Zalman grew up to be Harav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Zecher Tzadik Kadosh Livracha, the great Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. And he posed the same question to some youngsters, and they answered correctly, and he was very happy. But that's not what I got from the story. What I got from the story is, how do we react when we have questions. If we have issues, we have questions that should be burning for us. They should be questions that are at the forefront of our mind. Fundamental issues. It could be anything. It could be, why should I believe in God? It could be, what does the Gemara mean when it says this or that? Or what does Abai mean? What does Rava mean? What does Rav Yosef mean? In the Gemara. It could be, you have a question on halachot of Shabbat. How important is that question to you? Is it at the forefront of your mind? Can you sleep a night's sleep with the question still unanswered? Like some Rabbanim, they never slept until they knew the Pesach in the Gemara. They literally could not. They were so. They just couldn't. They were besides themselves. We're talking about Pesach in the Gemara. We're not talking about a life or death situation. Pesach in the Gemara. They could not put their head on the pillow. Like somebody who's drunk Diet Coke or 3 liters of Diet Coke and he can't sleep because he's on a caffeine high. That's what they're pacing around the room. Do we cry because we don't have the answers? Or we like the She'ena Yodei Lishol? Nah, doesn't matter. I've got a question. It doesn't matter. Let's, as the song goes, let's turn right over to the TV page. Let's busy ourselves with something else. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, when he was a 7-year-old boy, he cried because he didn't know the answer. We should be crying when we don't know the answer. Anyone who has a question like, we must turn over every stone. No stone must be left unturned until we know, until we are firm in our faith. Pesach teaches us we are a nation that asks questions. Not questions to mock like the Rasha. We can do without those. Even those questions may have a point, but we'd rather not ask those questions because those questions are mocking questions. Those questions are questions that we ask. We couldn't care less about the answer. We just want to make fun and have a good laugh. Those questions, they're not the best questions to ask, but there are plenty of questions we have. No Jew knows everything. So ask. Go and ask. Treat yourself to a good answer. You deserve a good answer. Even if it's a klotz kasha, it's a stupid question. You deserve a good answer. You deserve a good answer, so ask the question and don't leave any stone unturned. Now there is a minhag that we have, especially as Sephardim. What do we say? First of all, there are many things that we say to each other during Pesach. First we say Chag Sameach, we say Pesach Kasher Sameach, all these wonderful greetings. And during Chol HaMoed, we say Moadin L'Simcha, and the reply is Chagim Uzmanim L'Sason. Beautiful, such a beautiful greeting. It's a bracha. Every time we say that, it's a bracha. And your friend gives you a bracha in return. What can get better than that? But there's a wonderful phrase which the Sfarim say, not just on Pesach, but on other Chagim. We say, Tisku L'Shanim Rabot. Tisku L'Shanim Rabot. And what's the reply? Tisku L'Shanim Rabot Tovot Uneimot. Because when we give a blessing, in return, the other person gives an even greater blessing. So Tisku L'Shanim Rabot, may you be blessed with many years. And the reply is, may you be blessed with many years. Tisku Rabot, many years. Tovot, good years. Uneimot, and pleasant years. So what's all this? Blessed with pleasant years. Are we in charge of how many years, of how long we live? Can we say, yes, you are going to live to 120. Oh, wonderful, thank you very much. I'll go home and prepare for my 120th birthday in 50 years' time. We're not in charge of that. That's only Hashem. What's it got to do with us? That's the question that was asked in the Torah Tavin Haggadah. Listen to the answer from the Rizhiner Rebbe. The Rebbe of Rizhin says, of course it's not our choice how long we live, but the quality of our life, that is definitely in our hands. What does he mean? there are two ways, two extremes a person can live. Either he can get up at midday, if he's not working. If he's working, he dare not sleep in. But he's on the dole, he gets up at midday, what's the point? He goes around wasting his time, doodling around, mucking around, and then sleeps early, and then whatever shtort he does in between. Now, that person could live, let's say, 80 years, fine. He comes up to heaven. He's not really in a good place, unless he did teshuvah. Or what about a person who gets up early? He goes and davenates, or he davens in the early minyan. After he finishes, he learns Torah for an hour. Then he goes to work. He comes out to work from work. He goes to shiur. Then of course, he spends time with his wife and his children. There's no question. And Shabbat, he invites people. That person could die at 30 years old. God forbid, lo aleinu. But that person in his 30 years is like 300 years. And the person who lived for 80 years, it's like he's not even lived 6 months. Why? It's not the quality, the quantity that counts. It's the quality. It's the quality. That's what long life is talking about. That's why we say, we say arichat yamim and arichat shanim. Long days and long years. What does it mean, long days and long years? A person can live long years, 120 years. That's long years, that's pretty long. I don't know many people live till 120. Just now we had Rav Wozner, Zechet Tzaddik Kadosh V'chai, he passed away at 101 he was. He was on his way to 102. 6 months short of 102. Something like 6 months short of 102. That's a nice long life. And his life was extremely productive. So he had long years. But what's this arichat yamim, long days? You know what long days means? You can bless somebody with a quantity. Arichat shanim, have long years. But it's not just good enough to have long years if you're going to spend 120 years playing cards or wasting time, like I mentioned, all the things I mentioned previously. You want arichat yamim as well. You want long days as well. You want to spend your days productively, to know that every day I spent when I was in this world, I served you, capital Y-O-U. I served you, Hashem. Every day, every time I got the tap on my back and was asked, what are you doing now? I had an answer. I'm visiting the sick now. I'm teaching my children Torah. I'm going to shul. I'm visiting my parents. I'm giving tzedakah. I'm doing a chesed. Every time you had that tap on the back, you had an answer. There was nothing you were lacking. That's what it means when we bless people with arichat yamim. That's why we say tiskul hashanim rabot tovot v'nimot. It's not good enough the length; it's the quality. Now, a couple more points. I'm going to end up with a couple of stories, and then I'll let you go. You might ask yourself the question, not just on Pesach, any time of the year. You know, we read from the Torah. In this Chag of Pesach, we read every day. Every day we have Kriyat Torah. Now, the Kriyat Torah has cantillation, it has trop, it has notes. Now, these notes are the same. They're read in the same way. There's obviously different nuschaot, the different ways of pronouncing those notes. There's a Sephardi Tamim, there's Ashkenazi Tamim, there's Yemenite Tamim, there's different ways. But they're the same. They do not change. We have different traditions, but they're all based on holy. Now, did you ever ask yourself the question, why don't we modernize our Kriyat Torah? Why don't we make it we update it? Give it a nice modern tune. You know, make it a bit more funky. Lahavdil, $1,500. I'll answer this with a story. There was a story about a certain rabbi who was friendly with a fellow Jew who was not so frum. And he had certain ideas that were not in line with Judaism, but the rabbi was very fond of this fellow. And the rabbi spent many hours with this secular Jew. And one day the secular Jew asked the question that I asked you now. Why do we not modernize the notes of the Torah? Just change it. Do you have to be the same thing all the time, year after year after year? The rabbi said, it's a good question. I'm going to think about it. But you know what? I want to ask you a favor. I'm a little bit short today. Can you lend me 50 rubles? So the secular Jew was very fond of the rabbi. He said, sure, no problem. He took 50 rubles from his pocket and he gave it to the rabbi. The rabbi went away because I'll think about it, fine. When they next met, they were discussing different things, and the secular Jew asked the rabbi, sorry to trouble you, Rabbi, but do you have the 50 rubles that I gave you last time? Do you mind giving it back to me? Is it okay if I ask you for it? The rabbi looked at him and goes, I owe you 50 rubles? So the fellow said, yeah, you remember last time, a couple of months ago when we met? I lent you 50 rubles. The rabbi looked at him and goes, I owe you 50 rubles? He says, yes, you do. You don't remember? I didn't write it down, but I trust you. I owe you 50 rubles? The fellow's now getting exasperated. Rabbi, I lent it to you, don't you remember? Again, now he's screaming out, I owe you 50 rubles? Now the secular Jews are getting really upset. He's saying, how could you deny that? How could you tell me, look at me in my face and say that you don't owe me the money that I gave you in good faith? The rabbi said, I didn't deny it. I just told you, I admitted to you, I owe you 50 rubles. So, but you denied it. No, I didn't deny it. I just changed the tune slightly. You hear that? So clever, the rabbi. You could either say, oh, I owe you 50 rubles, or I owe you 50 rubles. It reminds me of a joke that I heard from a non-Jewish drummer who plays at Jewish weddings. He told me the story that there was an actor who was given a very small bit part in a play. I might have told you the story before, but it's worth repeating it. It gets me every time. So he's given a small bit part in this play, and his line is his feeder line. The person who's acting with him, he's supposed to give him the line, is that so-and-so coming from yonder? And the fellow's line, his only line in the whole play was, it is. Like that, yeah? So this fellow had to say 2 words in the whole play. Now this person was very nervous, yeah? He knew he was performing in front of a big theatre, and there was crowds and crowds of people. So he's thinking at home of the words. It is. I've got to get it right. It is. Right. Comes the day of the play, and now he's on stage, and he gets the feeder line from his fellow actor. Is this so-and-so that I see yonder? And now the fellow's thinking, he's so confident. He looks at the fellow, he goes, is it? Right? Not only does he get the words wrong, in the wrong order, but he says it in the wrong way. It's completely changes the meaning. From it is into is it? So you can have something which is so simple and come up with completely the opposite meaning. This is what we're taught here. It's not so much that the words they can be. Of course, the words can't be changed, but even the tunes can't be changed because the notes over the Torah, they give the words extra meaning. The Vilna Gaon was an expert in finding hidden meanings within just the notes on top of that we used to read the Kriyat Torah. Okay, so the splitting of the Red Sea. So here's one insight that I never heard before. We all know that the sea did not want to split for the Jews. On the 7th night of Pesach, by the way, that's the anniversary of the splitting of the Red Sea. So it's appropriate we say this. So the sea didn't want to split. They said, why should I split for the Jewish people? They're idol worshippers. The Egyptians worship idols. The Jews worship idols. So we are told that the answer we always given every year is that the sea saw the bones of Joseph. And because Joseph fled from Ashes Potiphar, the wife of Potiphar, it says Vayanos, he fled, so the sea should also flee. So the sea split because of the bones of Yosef. Very nice. Beautiful explanation. I read something else in the Torah Tavlin, in the name of the Reish Rav. He said, you know what the sea said? The sea came with a very convincing argument. The sea said, listen, there's priorities here. There's a pecking order here. Said the sea, was created on the third day. Man, and mankind wants me to split, man was created on the sixth day. The man should have respect for its elders. I was created first. Good argument, no? Fantastic argument. It's true. We were all taught, respect your elders. At least the way I was brought up, if I was addressing people who are older than me, I would call them aunt or uncle. That's how I was brought up. I can't call people older than me by their first name. And some people insist, no, call me by my first name. And I do concede sometimes, but I'm very uncomfortable with it. If I see somebody 20, 30 years older than me and they want me to call me by the first name, I feel very awkward with that. Sometimes I give in, I admit, because I know they feel better that way. But there's kavod for elderly people, especially your parents, which is also something that the youth forget these days. So it was a good argument. So now, what convinced the sea? The bones of Yosef. What was Yosef representing? Who was Yosef in terms of age? He was the second youngest Shevet. Only Binyamin was younger than him. Binyamin never took part in the selling of Joseph. But ultimately what happened? All the older brothers listened to Yosef, who was the second youngest. He had 11 brothers. But 10 of them were older than him, and they all listened to him. So if Yosef, who was the younger, would be listened to by his elders, so the same thing, what an argument. The same thing for the sea. You're older than man, but you can see all the brothers in Yosef. So you who are older, you also have to listen to man who is younger than you. And that's why the sea split. That's from the Reish Rav. So you can say that over on seventh night Seder while you're eating your matzahs, or soft matzahs if you're Sephardi. Okay, let's finish off with these two stories. So there's a beautiful story of the Noda B'Yehuda, Rav Landau. So the Noda B'Yehuda tells the following story. He said it was at home one day, it was Erev Pesach. He gets a knock on the door and he sees this 40-year-old Gentile man standing in his door looking a little bit bashful. He says, Rabbi, can I come in? So he thinks, what? This 40-year-old non-Jewish man, he wants to come into my house Erev Pesach, what could he want? He thinks, okay, let him in. So the fellow says, Rabbi, you might not recognize me, but you know me. The rabbi says, I know you? He says, yes. Let me tell you how you know me. I'll tell you the whole story. So he tells the following story. He said, Rabbi, when I was a young boy, I used to work for my father. My father was a baker. And my father was a man of very short temper. And he used to fly into a rage and beat me and hit me and curse me and everything whenever he wanted to. And I was very scared of him. And one day, when I was a very young boy, he sent me out with a big package of bread, different types of bread, and he told me, go and sell these in the marketplace. Fine. It's good to be away from my father, so he won't lose his temper with me. I went out, and he gave me a whole big box, and I sold every last one. And I was leaving to go back to my father. I was very happy. I thought my father's going to compliment me for once. So I came home, and I was at the door about to go in, and I feel in my pocket for the money. The money's not there. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, either I dropped it, maybe it was stolen. I couldn't find the money anywhere. So I sat in the street. I thought, my father's going to kill me. He's going to beat me. Who knows what he's going to do to me? So I started crying and crying and crying. And then who walked past, of all people? You, Rabbi. You walked past me and you saw me. And you said to me, why are you crying? And I told you the story. And you gave me the money, every penny that I had lost. You gave it to me and said, go home to your father. And I went home and that was it. And now I'm grown up. I'm already in my 40s. And I took over the bakery of my father. Now I have my own bakery. And I've come to tell you about something terrible that's going to happen to the Jews. Because the bakers in this town, and this was Prague, by the way, Prague. You know, a lot of stuff happened in Prague. In this town, all the bakers got together and they said, you know, it's going to be the holiday of the Jews and they don't eat bread, but they'll all be gagging to buy our bread after Pesach. So what will we do? We are going to poison the bread and the Jews will eat it and they'll all die. And you know what? Nobody will care. So they all gang together and they included me in their plan. But I knew better because I know that you helped me and I want to help you. So now the Noda B'Yehuda couldn't believe it. So what does he do? This is Erev Pesach. He thinks, well, we can't go and expose the whole thing because there will be no proof. So the Noda B'Yehuda thinks about it and he conjures up an incredible plan. And he waits till after Pesach. He doesn't tell anybody about the plot. He waits till the last day of Pesach. And he makes an announcement in Shul. All the Jews of all the Batei Knesiot need to gather in the central main Shul. I have a very important announcement. He calls all of them and he tells all, because all the Jews, they all respect the Noda B'Yehuda. And the Noda B'Yehuda says, Rabotai, I've got to tell you something very important. We have made a terrible mistake. We have miscalculated the timing of Pesach. And you might think it's the last day of Pesach and tonight you're going to eat your chometz. It's not the 8th day of Pesach. It's actually the 7th day of Pesach. So I'm so sorry. Tonight is not the end of Pesach. We have to add on one day. And of course there were grumblings and murmurings, but everybody, listen, the Noda B'Yehuda is telling us we obey whatever he said. They listened to the rabbi and they kept an extra day of Pesach. Meanwhile, during that time, they tipped off the police. The police went and checked the bread and they saw that it was poisoned and they rounded up the culprits. They imprisoned the whole lot of them and that was the end of the story. So now what comes out of this? Shalach lachmacha ala mayim, send forth your bread across the waters. This is my own thinking. Yeah, it says, do something in advance. Send your bread across the waters, because now afterwards you're going to have what goes around comes around. Who would ever believe that a rabbi walking past and seeing a little Gentile boy and paying him what probably was a large amount of money would think, okay, it's a mitzvah and that's it. Through that, he saved the Jews in the entire town of Prague. No good deed goes unrewarded. If you're going to go, you are where you're supposed to be and you do what you're supposed to do. And finally, my final story. This, I believe, is a true story. And there was a young family. And there was a mother, father, and a son and a daughter. And the mother and the father were having a conversation with each other and they were talking about the young boy. And the little girl, who was 8 years old at the time, she was listening to her parents talking about her brother. And the parents were saying, our son has no hope. We found this terrible growth in his head and the doctors have analysed it and he needs an operation to remove this tumour. What are we going to do? There's no way we can afford this operation to remove this tumour. And the parents are going back and forth. And then one of the parents says, what our son needs is a miracle. Now the little girl doesn't know what's going on. She's 8 years old. She's overhearing her parents talking, my brother needs a miracle? So what does she do? She goes back to her room and she looks, she's got a piggy bank. Or like a little pot with money in it. She's collecting. She pours out all the money in there. How much was it? $1.11. I don't know how long ago the story was. It probably was a fairly significant amount of money, but not a huge amount of money. She takes this $1.11. She goes down to the pharmacist. And she's waiting, and she sees the pharmacist. Obviously, when you're a little 8-year-old kid, everyone is way taller than you. So she's waiting there, and she sees the pharmacist is talking to some guy. And he's talking, and she's waiting, and she wants to say something. And the pharmacist is ignoring her. Little kid, what does the little kid want? So she says, excuse me. And the pharmacist is ignoring her. And then the pharmacist said, can't you see? I'm talking to my brother. I haven't seen him for so long. Well, she said, I also have a brother. And my brother needs a miracle. And I want to ask you, I want to buy a miracle. I have money with me. Do you have a miracle that I can buy? So the pharmacist says, what? What are you talking about? I want to buy a miracle, she says. The pharmacist says, what is it? So the fellow the pharmacist was talking to, who was the brother of the pharmacist, says, hey, little girl, I have a miracle for you. You have money? How much money do you have? She goes, I got $1.11. He says, $1.11? That's exactly how much a miracle costs. Tell me what you need the miracle for. So she tells him the whole story. You know what? Believe it or not, the brother of the pharmacist was a neurosurgeon. And he went with the little girl. She showed him back to the home, and he met the parents. And he must have been so taken by the little girl and the whole story that he offered his services to perform the operation for the young boy, and he did it free of charge. And the boy survived. Can you believe such a thing? No person should ever say, this situation is beyond hope. What can I do? I'm standing outside a shul and there's nobody there. What's the point? How am I going to be effective? Pesach is telling us, you make a difference. You are where you're supposed to be, and you do what you're supposed to do. Whether you're a little girl, you're doing something that seems pointless. It's Narishkeit. What's $1 going to do? What difference does it make? You make a difference. You just make the moves. Hashem will fill in the gaps. And in this way, with all our little things that we're doing in the right place at the right time, Hashem will make the biggest move of all, the move that we all need, the move that we prayed for every day, and that the month of Nisan is especially emblematic of this miracle. Hashem will bring us Mashiach Tzidkenu in the Binyan Ariel, and we will see this year in Yerushalayim Bezrat Hashem, Yer HaKodesh, Mashiach Tzidkenu, and Eliyahu Navi. It should come without any pain. V'chein yisov v'mar amen. Mo'odim l'simcha, chagim uzmanim l'sason.